last round of the day here on day one. And of course, this is where we're going to be making our cuts. Now, for the match that we've got here, both teams are 4-2 safely into the next day, but the winner should be able to make top 16, thus earning them that first round bye tomorrow in an elimination round. It's a huge deal. A lot on the line for these two teams. Belarus versus the United States right now. Hello and welcome to coverage of the World Magic Cup. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Simon Gertz, and we're ready for round 7 action here, where we've got Belarus versus the United States. In our main feature, we've got Igor Kleonski playing Bant Eldrazi for Belarus, and he's drawn
17.
A tough assignment, shall we say, here in round 7. He's got to play against Owen Turtenwald on a deck that he's played a lot of, in fact.
Yeah. One of the most experienced players in the room, one of the best players in the room, on one of the best decks in the room.
Yeah, it really is. This is going to be a tall order for Igor, but we'll see if he can pull it off here. These teams are both sitting at 4-2, Simon, which should put them safely into day 2 either way, but there's still a lot on the line for them.
Yeah, they are not looking at top 48 because that is locked. They want to be in the top 16 to get that elusive bye tomorrow morning. Sleep in if you want.
Maybe.
Go.
All right, no second land here for Turtenwald, but thanks to the Noble Hierarch, he is able to deploy a Blighted Agent and maybe put a bunch of pressure on Igor.
Oh, that's already huge pressure because he does have the 2 mana, so I think it's smart to get rid of that agent while Turtenwald is tapped out.
Yeah, and then it does solve one of Owen's problems in that it gets him another land onto the battlefield, but
17.
leaves him with no viable threats at the moment.
Otherwise, you just leave yourself dead to 2 pump spells that give +4/+4. That doesn't seem like a good way to approach this matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not going to fire off your path there.
Also, the Blighted Agent is the scariest card you're facing from Infect because Bant Eldrazi actually has a lot of creatures to block with.
Yeah. And you can see that he's got 2 creatures here. Noble Hierarch crashes in for a couple of damage and knocks Owen down to 15.
I'm looking at the deck list, and I see that there are 2 Engineered Explosives in the main deck, in the Bant Eldrazi main deck.
Wow.
Which is interesting because it can also be found with Ancient Stirrings.
Oh, okay. This is a Gitaxian Probe now from Turtenwald, and he's going to see a land, another Path to Exile, the Displacer, which can also be annoying if this game goes on for a while, and then a Reality Smasher.
Yeah, very good point. There are effectively 2 ways to beat Infect with Bant Eldrazi. The first way is to raise them, which is very hard, but you can do it with maybe a removal spell here and there, a Reality Smasher to finish things up. Or you go into a kind of a weird control mode where you have an Eldrazi Displacer and you're just threatening to punish all kind of pump attempts.
Right. Effectively forcing the Infect player to move all in on one big turn where they can protect their creature and follow it up with a bunch of pump spells, which they can do that too.
In fact, Spellskite plus Eldrazi Displacer is almost a hard lock against Infect.
Yeah. Here comes Reality Smasher, though.
Yep.
And this is going to try to meet that requirement that you mentioned earlier, where he had a removal spell to take out the Blighted Agent, and now he's following up a couple of turns later with a Reality Smasher and really just trying to put the damage race to Owen Turtenwald here.
Which is a 7/7, thanks to the 2 Hierarchs.
2-turn clock, Simon. It's going to go very quickly.
But that's what you have the pump spells for, right?
And it looks like that's what Owen's thinking.
Yeah, the fetching here could indicate that Groundswell will be used, giving +4/+4 if a land entered the battlefield.
And there's a Groundswell right on time.
It's now 4/5, yes?
Yes.
And he is going to have to use a Vines of Vastwood as well. But interestingly, you're probably not as sad to 2-for-1 yourself against a Reality Smasher, since you were kind of going to have to anyway.
No, this is actually a pretty good trade.
Yeah.
And a very efficient use of mana. You can see that Turtenwald kept Mutagenic Growth and a second Vines of Vastwood. So should he draw an Infect creature, he will be able to pump it to lethal for only 2 mana.
In the meantime, he has not found that other creature. He just has Vines and the pair of Mutagenic Growths in hand. So he just is forced to attack for a single point of damage with a Hierarch. Not normally how this deck wins, but it does. Can do the job, especially if you start combining it with Become Immense.
And as we often see in Modern, once a deck gets this kind of advantage going, it spirals out of control. So now we have Thought-Knot here, checking out what's going on. Next turn we'll have Eldrazi Displacer, and then Owen will already be facing lethal, because this is just a really fast clock.
Yeah. Owen's going to take a couple of damage from the Noble Hierarch, and interestingly, he did actually find the Become Immense. But at 16 life, Igor Kleonski just is out of range here.
Igor also has a lot of very good cards in his hand. He's still working with a Displacer and a Path to Exile.
Speaking of, here comes the Displacer to just knock the Noble Hierarch out of the way for a turn, prevent any chump blocks, and that is going to be an attack for 6, dropping Owen down to 4, and forcing the issue here. Wow, he even found another one, but it's not good enough. He's not going to be able to punch through for 16 regular damage or enough infect with no infect creatures, and that means that Igor Kleonski is going to take game 1 from one of the toughest players in the whole room, Owen Turtenwald, here, and give Belarus a 1-game advantage in his match. We'll be back right after these messages.
Kaladesh is now available on Magic Duels. Build endless deck combinations with more than 1,000 unique cards. Play through hours of story with 50 campaign missions. Play Magic Duels free today on Xbox One, Steam, iPad, and iPhone.
Got an over-the-top Standard deck that's ready to bust the format wide open? Sleeve up and throw down at Standard Showdown tournaments for a chance to win sweet prizes. 4 weeks only every Saturday from November 26th through December 17th. Lock in your game at magic.wizards.com/Standard Showdown.
Hello there, welcome back to the feature match area here in Rotterdam for the World Magic Cup. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Simon Gertzen. Let's jump over to table A. This is our front table where we've got Kevin Jones versus Dmitry Andronchik. And Kevin is playing kind of his signature deck here, Simon. He's playing Grixis Delver. Dimitri's playing Jund.
Yeah. We saw Delver decks a while ago become really, really popular, but in the last few months, not a lot of players stuck to it.
Gosh, the Delver decks, kind of had a resurgence with Treasure Cruise and the like, but even there was an era of Modern kind of back in the day when you could play like we called it Rug Delver at the time, now we'd call it Teamer Delver, and then this deck appeared.
Yeah.
Jund kind of happened, and then those decks faded away.
Destroyer of fun.
Yes. It certainly destroyed my fun. I used to play this Delver deck, but not that it can't win. It's not completely dead. It's just Jund has so many great answers for what you're trying to do.
It's playing a lot of powerful cards, and it has a lot of synergy. It's just not really well positioned in a lot of these matchups, and you really have to know what you're doing. And from what I've heard, Kevin Jones is the person to talk to when it comes to Grixis Delver.
Yeah, he has a reputation for winning tournaments with this deck. He knows what he's doing. He knew what he wanted to play when they were deciding which decks to play for the Modern portion here. And in fact, they actually molded their choices while picking their Modern decks around him getting to play this Grixis Delver deck, presumably because they thought that he had such a good advantage playing this deck. It does gobble up quite a few pretty good cards, too. Some of the lands, the bolts, that kind of stuff.
Mostly the bolts, I think, because you don't want to play too many Snapcaster decks anyway.
Yeah, and this is the tough part about playing against Jund, is that you have a hard time getting rid of their Tarmogoyfs, and they have an easy time getting rid of basically all your threats.
Yeah, you really need your Terminates.
You're right. Oh, does he have one? There it is. Terminate for the Tarmogoyf. And Kevin Jones, even though we've seen two of his Delver of Secrets get ruthlessly lightning bolted off the battlefield, he's still able to apply pressure, and he's got Dimitri down to 8.
He's ahead on this board. He's playing with 2 creatures and 4 lands against 3 creatures and a Dark Confidant.
Yeah.
Which might not actually be what Dimitri needs here.
Yeah, this always gets interesting when you're playing against a Snapcaster Mage Lightning Bolt deck and you play a Dark Confidant at 8 life. But it looks like Kevin is going to prefer to just keep attacking here anyway.
Which is smart. You don't want to give your opponent those extra cards to get out of that. But now, Dimitri could be looking at putting his fate into the hands of Dark Confidant.
He's taking next turn off. He's got to pay for this Slaughter Pact. Ooh, there's 3 from the Liliana of the Veil to drop him down to 4.
Should have blocked.
I think he drew a Scavenging Ooze, though, for his regular draw step, which is the type of card that can pull him back from this really tight game, but he may find himself under the watchful eye of Bob there.
And Scavenging Ooze is expensive to use.
Yes. Yeah, it'll take up another one of his turns at least.
I don't think that Kevin Jones wants Dimitri on 4. I think he wants him on 3 or less, so that more of his cards are immediately lethal.
Yeah. Yeah, these Jund decks often don't even play 4-mana spells, and there's maybe some in his deck, but...
Kevin just found Kolaghan's Command with his Thought Scour, so that's absolutely huge.
And he did not attack this turn, by the way, and Dimitri dodges the Bob bullet there and finds a land on the top of his library. This is how this starts to get out of hand.
He also has... The big question is, how many green sources does he have?
Yeah, he's got 2 on board right now. He did find a land in there. And here's that Scavenging Ooze. This is a major issue, but with 1 green source only available, if he goes to activate it, Kevin can snap off that ooze. Yeah, it looks like it was another Blackcleave Cliffs there in hand for Dimitri.
Which Dimitri will most likely play. Dimitri, on the other hand, doesn't have a reason to activate his ooze already. No. And Kevin Jones would like to kill the Scavenging Ooze and get back a Delver or a Snapcaster Mage.
Yes.
Which, of course, doesn't work as long as the ooze is still active.
Now, can he just say, 2U with Mike Hologon's command, get back Snapcaster Mage, and just go for that line.
Then Dimitri responds by gaining a life, and you don't get the Snapcaster.
Because he's going to gobble it up.
Exactly. So I think as long as the green mana is there, you shouldn't really go for that. You can bring your opponent down to 2, and then he goes up to 3, and you hope that the Confident kills him. But if the Scavenging Ooze survives, you do get... Oh, wow. This has to be in response. No.
Yeah, I think it was. I think he said resolves.
Yeah, this is the other option. If you don't trust your opponent to tap out, this is the safer way of playing it.
Right.
Much safer play.
Yeah, he's just going to avoid the whole situation here. There's that Black Cleat Cliffs now for Dimitri, but Kevin Jones now with a Snapcaster Mage in hand, a slew of cards in his graveyard. Looks like he's getting close as Dimitri basically can't activate that Scavenging Ooze. He just has to leave up that green mana perpetually.
Yeah, and what do you do in your upkeep? You have 2 green sources and a Confident trigger. So,
oh God! And you're at 2.
And you're at 2. So if you don't do anything, you might just lose on the spot.
Yes.
If you tap out of green mana, you lose to the Snapcaster.
Yeah.
So maybe you can afford to spend 1 green mana to not lose to a flip
to a
Tarmogoyf.
2-drop or whatever. Oh man.
It's
I think you just trust in Dark Confidant.
You have to.
It won't betray you. It looks like a very trustworthy companion. What a cool spot. Looks like a Delver of Secrets off the top for Kevin Jones. He'll take it. Better than a land.
I love these kind of spots, and those happen more often in older formats, Modern, Legacy, where both players know something about what the other is capable of, but it stops both of them from executing it.
Yeah.
That's the idea, yeah.
All right. Is this Bob gonna...
Cards in hand is 2, 1...
Curious to see what Dimitri does with the mana on his upkeep, but I'm really curious to see, of course, what that card is with Bob. Is it going to betray him, or is it going to help him dig out of this mess? So, can't activate it. Upkeep triggers on the stack. It looks like Dimitri is going to use up a green mana here. It also matters what's in the graveyard here. And it looks like with that graveyard, Kevin has so many options. We saw Tassiger. He's going to eat up a Snapcaster Mage, go to 3. Is he going to leave the other green? He left the other green up because he knows he can't. And he dies to his own Maelstrom Pulse. Oh, man. Hits one of his 3 drops, and Kevin Jones says, just like I drew it up. That one goes to the USA. Dimitri has kind of a half smile, half what the on his face there. Oh, man.
To be fair, Dimitri hadn't won this by any means, even if he doesn't take damage that turn, because he is restricted on mana by this whole interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, things were looking really terrible for him, even without it, but...
Yeah, I had a lot of land.
Bob was merciful. Didn't let that game go any further. So let's jump back to Owen Turtenwald versus Igor Klyansky. This is our table B. This is our middle table. And Owen has kicked things off with a Glistener Elf.
Yeah, the scary turn 1 infect creature on the play.
Scary for Igor.
Scary for the opponent, yes. The infect player is very happy about.
Right, I mean, because sometimes you'll see them wait, but not against Bant.
Now that Blossoming Defense is also in the mix, there are a lot of hands where it's actually better to wait until you have a mana to protect your infect creature.
Wow, Owen gets a lot of information here. This is really important information from this Gitaxian probe as well. The 2 creatures, he would have seen those either way, but the Blessed Alliance and the Stubborn Denial, knowing about those really allows Owen to set up his game plan best he can.
Yeah, both of these instances can really disrupt your game plan. I would say the Blessed Alliance more than the Stubborn Denial, but it's really important to know about both of them.
Yeah, the key interaction with Blessed Alliance is that it targets the opponent. rather than the creature, and it says target opponent sacrifices an attacking creature, which, if you've watched a lot of Modern, you'll see that the Infect deck very often just has the one attacking creature to take advantage of Exalted, and then, they'll pile a bunch of pump spells on that.
Yeah, and usually you can't really afford to miss points of damage with this deck. Now that Owen knows about the Blasted Alliance, of course he can engineer a board state where he attacks with 2 Infect creatures, or where he attacks even better with Glistener Elf and Noble Hierarch.
Yes.
Just to play around this card. The mode target player gains for life, not very valuable.
Curious how much Owen can get in for here. He's already attacking, and now he's got Groundswell, so that's 5. So halfway there for Owen Turtenwald.
Maybe more.
And he's got another Glistener Elf as well.
So that's a huge backup, and means
Yes.
that casting Eldrazi Displacer looks a lot scarier than I thought.
Yeah, he may go for the Sky Spawner just to give him 2 blockers and kind of make things a little awkward for Owen.
Threatening or asking Owen for 2 pump spells for the cost of only 1 card.
Stick 1.
18.
Yeah, there it is. Give you an update as well. Pavel Miedvedsky. He's on Affinity. He's playing against Paul Yim, who's on Green-White Tron, and they're actually heading to Game 3, so sparks flying back there on our back table, but we'll keep you updated as it goes. Again, Kevin Jones had taken Game 1 from Grixis Delver. And we're in Game 2 here with Kleonski up a game over Turtenwald. But Turtenwald looking pretty good this game.
Oh, absolutely. This is only game 2, but Infect is looking really strong. Igor already had to change his curve, or how he would like to deploy his cards, and cannot feel safe about what's coming next.
Yeah, especially, I see a Dismember in hand here for Turtenwald. His hand is stacked. Look at that hand, Simon.
Yes. And something that we've mentioned before is how mana efficient but also mana constrained the Infect deck is. Which is why it's so important to get those first 4 extra points with Groundswell in, because it puts more pressure on the opponent and frees up your mana. You don't want to pump a creature to 10 power in a single turn.
And this is Igor's plan, was to block and kind of force the issue on Turtenwald. And Owen's going to use a Might of Old Krosa on 1 Glistener Elf. And he is going to just bite the bullet here and use Become Immense, perhaps his best pump spell, at least his biggest pump spell, just to get through.
Yeah, it's
bold.
Sure.
That's a super aggressive use of resources there.
Yeah, it really is. But Owen also knows about the Stubborn Denial.
Go.
And he likes the way that this board looks now.
From
engineered explosives there off the top for
yeah, my read is that he wanted to get the displacer with the Dismember, and then still have a backup for to protect his Glistener Elf with, because Vines of Vastor plus Glistener Elf is lethal if there's no blocker.
Right.
So you could actually force a chump block with Noble Hierarch. And Kleonski doesn't have to cast the explosives here because he's thinking, I'm relatively safe, right? With having the Blessed Alliance up.
And he kind of is.
He is. Owen doesn't have enough tools, or doesn't have the tools that he would need to get through here, and that Engineered Explosives might actually be the card that puts him out of this game. I think he'll go back and reconsider that turn 3 where he was facing the Eldrazi Scion.
And the 2/1 flyer.
Because that exchange, that seemed very expensive. You went down to 1 creature, so Blessed Alliance was very good again. All of a sudden, you traded 2 of your cards for 2 of your opponents, but also enabled the Stubborn Denial. So ultimately, a lot of things that didn't go Owen's way. He did have the information, so I'm sure he considered that this is probably his best bet.
Now he's forced to chump block here.
That's actually not a chump block because he has a Pendelhaven.
Sure.
That was
It was a 2-3 versus a 2-3.
yeah, that was not a great attack because of infect.
No, absolutely not.
Go.
That was just a sweet block. Still, you still have to like Igor's side of the table here, though, right?
I do, but interactions like this is where a player like Owen Turtenwald gets back percentage points that other players don't get because it makes you more nervous to play against the number 3 in the world, the U.S. team captain, the Hall of Famer Owen Turtenwald.
He's also particularly intimidating just himself, you know, because he plays so cleanly. He's very serious at the table as well. That I've definitely heard a lot of players say that they feel intimidated.
Also,
by
his haircut is very strict.
Very much so.
Drop.
I know what you mean. It's he has a very good presence.
He does.
A very strong presence.
Yeah, he always has. Now, we see now that Owen has searched up a Dryad Arbor with his fetch land, which is going to give him, air quotes, protection from Blessed Alliance.
Yeah.
And that's going to force a block here, right?
So clearly that's one of the reasons why Dryad Arbor's in the deck. Liliana of the Veil is the primary reason. And now Owen is hoping to force a chump block with Noble Hierarch. Might also have a read that Igor is a little bit flooded here.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like Blessed Alliance, and maybe he's going to gain 4 life as well.
Sure.
And then, yes, he's going to throw the chump block in. And like you said, this is Owen just whittling away, and this is where Igor really needs a big draw step, something big like a big creature, and he couldn't find it, so he's going to have to lean heavily on this engineered explosives, which is going to work.
Which is great. The big question is actually, do you sacrifice it right away?
Yeah, you probably do. Like he's at least going to take 2 poison here. He can sack it now, but
I agree. I would sacrifice as well. If this was a different board state where Owen still had 5-6 cards in hand, then you might be stranding cards in Owen's hand, and this gives you protection from Glistener Elf actually killing you.
Right.
But with the way the game has progressed, you can be pretty sure that Owen is not holding a Glistener Elf back.
That's right. But he did draw Inkmoth Nexus for the turn here, Simon. So things looking very good for Owen as far as that goes. That card immune to the explosives and also just difficult to interact with in general without card like Path to Exile.
Yeah, and casting a Noble Hierarch to chump block or potentially chump block Glistener Elf with, I don't really like because your engineered explosive is the card for that job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this is Owen picking up the game here.
He also has 1 mana left to pay for Stubborn Denial.
Yes, and that does it. You mentioned it. Really interesting way that played out. Owen with the great start. Then it looked like the pendulum swung back in the other direction, but a little misstep here and there, and Owen clawed his way back in. And again, using that information from the very first turn of the game all the way deep into the final turn.
Yeah, and if I may add something, we saw a lot of sideboard cards. I think we saw too many sideboard cards.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
We saw Blessed Alliances, we saw Stubborn Denials, we saw Engineered Explosives, we saw Noble Hierarchs, and the Bantal Eldrazi deck failed to play its own game.
Yes.
Being busy trying to survive. But ultimately, almost all modern decks will beat you if given enough time. Especially in the hands of Owen Turtenwald.
All right, well, we're on table C here. See if they get underway. There they go. So table C is Affinity versus Green-White Tron. 2 decks on the kind of polar opposite end of the spectrums here in Modern, but the players are tied at 1 game apiece, and as you can see, Pavel Miedvedski here is on the play, which is, well, that is no joke when you're talking about Affinity.
So traditionally, Affinity is not too keen on playing against Tron, but that's mostly red or red-green Tron builds. They have Pyroclasm to punish you for those explosive starts before, for example, cards like Steel Overseer really become active.
that a chromatic sphere down there?
Yes. So chromatic sphere is
gone now. By
is
the way.
actually the card that you're happy to destroy, whereas chromatic star still gives your opponent a card when you destroy it.
Yeah, a pair of towers here for Paul Yim means that the map can go get one of the other pieces, but
yeah, but it's
little
all going to
awkward.
be much slower, and
Yes.
that's why I like. Oh,
There's plating.
sorry.
No, that wasn't for you. I just saw the cranial plating hit the battlefield, and if I'm sitting in Paul Yim's seat, I'm like, uh-oh.
The destroying the mana fixing of the Tron deck is really important because it means they cannot deploy their Nature's Claims or their Stony Silences or whatever they might be boarding in.
And they do, and he did. He's got Nature's Claim in his hand. In fact, he may even have 2 copies of it. He's also got, key late game cards that if he could have found Tron a little sooner, a Wormcoil Engine goes a long way against an Affinity deck, but that's for the extreme late game as far as Modern goes, and he's nowhere near it.
Yeah, actually not too many sideboard cards apart from the Nature's Claim that are only targeted at Affinity. Stony Silence not a good choice for Tron because you want to activate your own artifacts. So clearly you don't want to board in cards that make your own deck weaker.
So Paul went and got a Razor Verge Thicket, which is going to unlock the power of his hand, at least somewhat, giving him access to green mana and an Ancient Stirrings, and you can see the Nature's Claim here as well. He's going to take down the plating.
And that's a huge Nature's Claim because
Massive.
When we talk about Affinity, we think about the high impact cards.
You
And
mean like Arcbound Ravager that he just drew?
Arcbound Ravager is one of them, yes. So
As an example.
but there aren't too many of them in the deck. Usually you have between 12 and 14. And killing one of them just this turn left Pavel with 1 point of attack.
Yeah, he could have gone for more with the Ravager, but sure.
Yeah, that would have been very all in.
Yes. So here's Ancient Stirrings now from Paul. Looking to try to set up Tron. It looks like he's found an Urza's Mine.
Ancient Stirrings is such a powerful card in the right deck.
Great in these decks that really are maximized on it. We see it in Lantern as well. It can do work. All right, here we go. An Oblivion Stone.
And this
Seems like it's going to do work here. It's going to be pretty tough for Pavel to get Paul from 13 to 0 here, and that Oblivion Stone does work.
There's one great way to play around Oblivion Stone.
What's that?
It destroys non-land permanents.
Okay.
So it's risky, but what you can do is you put all your eggs in one basket, you sacrifice all your artifacts that would die to Oblivion Stone anyway, you just put them on Blinkmoth Nexus.
Okay.
That's something that I would heavily consider in Pavel's seat here. He actually doesn't have to do it before damage because he can just I think he will deal more thanks to the Signal Pass trigger. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was the line. I'm reasonably certain that you would be threatening let's say 7+6 points of damage here.
All right.
Or in this case, if he already did the math, you can also wait until your opponent threatens to pop the Oblivion Stone.
That was the 7 part of the 7+6 that you just described, by the way, Simon. Paul's down to 6.
Yeah, and now you can do. Now we can.
Path to Exile, though.
Now it gets interesting.
Now it gets interesting. That was a great draw from Paul Yim.
So Pavel has exactly 1 mana. He didn't leave his Mox Opal untapped, just so to be absolutely sure that he will have a basic land to tap, and the Ravager can easily grow to a 6/6 and turn Blinkmoth Nexus into a 7/7 that would not be destroyed by Paul's Oblivion Stone. At the same time, he is threatening 3, 4, 5 points of damage when attacking.
Just on its own?
No, it's actually 6. It's 7 or more if you animate the Blinkmoth. So now, Paul, I don't know if he can win this.
He needed an extra mana, huh?
Yeah. That would have been probably the game if he had been able to Oblivion Stone plus Path to Exile.
He's going to fire off Path on the Arcbound Ravager, but doesn't get him where he needs to go, does it?
Isn't this giving everything away? How afraid are you of 3 colorless sources?
Not.
No.
It looks like Pavel's kind of working through the options as well. What could he be doing here? He's also got his teammates with him.
To be fair, the attack was incoming, so you did have to do something there.
Yeah.
That's 6 with the single pass trigger.
Yeah, and that's going to do it. So Paul Yim has to extend the hand here to Pavel Miedzecki, who is going to take down the match 2-1 and put Belarus just 1 match win away from winning the round and putting themselves probably in that upper tier of top 16 that gets the bye tomorrow. Now, these players are both going to be able to make it in. Excuse me, these teams will be making it into day 2. Either way. But there is a lot on the line. It's an elimination day tomorrow. And getting a bye is just huge.
I think Luis put it best when he said, these players are now playing for the bye, but if you lose, you still can win the match tomorrow.
Yep.
So ultimately, it's not a huge loss. It doesn't lose you the tournament. It doesn't throw you out. But of course, effectively, it means you need 1 win in one of these 2 rounds.
Right.
I think just psychologically, it's much more preferable to know you're heading into day 2 with a top 16 after the Swiss.
That's good.
So Dmitry Andronchik, he's playing Jund. We saw this earlier. Kevin Jones had taken game 1 from him. This is game number 2. Wow, look at that hand from Kevin. Triple lightning bolt Tassiger. He loses his serum visions here.
Is it Tassiger or Murderous Cut? We have to.
Oh, no, they do look very similar. I often get those 2 mixed up. That one is Murderous Cut, though.
Same mechanic as well.
Yes.
But now Kevin's hand is a lot weaker. He would have used that serum visions to find persistent threats. Mm-hmm. His hand is now very burn heavy, which Dimitri certainly has to respect. We might actually see him delay some spells, not to take too much damage from his lands. But this hand doesn't beat down.
No, he did just find a Vendilion click off the top of his library, which could give him a threat a little bit down the line, but it's a little slow.
Now he has to play a long game now against the mid-range king of the format.
Yeah.
Against Lilianas, against potential scavenging oozes, which we saw be hugely relevant.
There's a Snapcaster Mage off the top of the library for Kevin Jones, giving him perhaps an avenue of recursive damage down the line here. He's going to want to get value from it. I wouldn't be surprised to see him flash back that Serum Visions at first chance either.
Oh, absolutely. If he doesn't have a 3rd land, we could actually see an empty Snapcaster Mage, because if he draws that 3rd land, he has mana for a lot of things anyway. So the card advantage value might not be as big as getting on board and dealing a few points of damage with Snapcaster Mage. I personally think the turn to Snapcaster has always been underrated, but I understand why it's difficult to make that decision when you have a juicy target in your side in your graveyard.
In your yard, yeah. All right, Collective Brutality now from Dmitry. Is he discarding anything? Yes, just 1 card. So he's going to drain him for 2 and then use the, you could hear him, he said the duress effect.
And the gain 2 is because he knows about all the lightning bolts in Kevin Jones's hand. Mm-hmm. Still a decision I find a bit surprising. I think those cards in hand you can always use later, for example, to fuel Liliana, to keep it going a bit longer.
Yes. Take a look at Team USA huddled behind Kevin Jones now.
Now it's drain and gain, right? I'm at 16 and you're at 21.
And Kevin had actually a pretty tough time making it here to Rotterdam. He needed to get a passport sorted out, and then he had an issue with his flight. He was a little bit late for it. I know Owen was on Messenger. Hey, you here yet? You gonna make it? And he did. He came in.
That's
Can be stressful.
Very stressful. Very stressful.
Yeah, for Kevin and for the rest of his team who really needs him here. You can see the pace of play has slowed a little bit here. This is not uncommon as we start working our way down to the really important matches that are going to decide who wins the round.
My only complaint about the team format is that it does slow down from time to time.
Yeah.
And then not drawing your matches becomes a really high priority. I think in Modern that's actually not a big deal, because you can usually finish games rather quickly.
Here's that Vendelian click now from Kevin Jones. He's going to target Dimitri with the triggered ability. He's going to see some nice stuff here. Liliana of the Veil terminate.
I would assume that this was specifically targeted at Liliana. It's very easy to deal with her with only a single card. Almost impossible.
Ooh, Tarmogoyf off the top, though, from Dimitri. He found a forest with the Vendelian click ability. But first, he's going to go terminate and then Tarmogoyf. That actually worked out beautifully for Dimitri. Now he's the one who's got the threat.
And he even got the murderous cut out of Kevin Jones's hand before doing all of that.
Kevin's going to use Thought Scour to mill himself for 2. He finds another Serum Visions and a land in there. How big is Tarmogoyf, of course, is the question. Is it something that if Kevin has another red mana source, he can even double bolt? It's got to be, right?
We have instant creature sorcery land. And I believe that's it. So it's a 4. And the Planeswalker?
No, that went to the bottom of the library.
So it's a
4/5 Tarmogoyf. But unfortunately for Kevin Jones, just the single red mana source right now, so he doesn't even have the option.
No, and he's a bit flooded with lightning bolts and snapcaster mages. So he opted to play a long game, but his mana is not really cooperating with that.
Yeah, so it looks like he might try to combine a snapcaster mage and a lightning bolt together to take down the Tarmogoyf. He drew Young Pyromancer for the turn, but you saw it on camera. He kind of shrugged and he's like, go. He knows he needs to deal with this Tarmogoyf first and foremost. And again, being crimped on red mana means that his only play for the turn would have been that Young Pyromancer, which
and that's the problem.
Yeah.
If he had double red available, it would be a different story.
Yeah.
Of course, he's hoping for an activation of Raging Ravine, but those 3 lightning bolts in his hand are not a secret. They are public information.
We know it. You at home know it. Dimitri certainly knows about it.
It doesn't get more public than that.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the mana really is constricting Kevin. Right now, he's got a pair of Snapcaster Mages, triple Lightning Bolt, and a Young Pyromancer. His hand is stacked up. Is he going to activate the Ravine? Oh, he is. Kevin leans forward and says, okay, remember, when it attacks, it picks up a +1/+1 counter, but before that, you can just Lightning Bolt it.
That's a way to play it, because it does force your opponent into doing what you want them to do. I don't think it's the most powerful turn possible. You could have certainly done more with that turn.
In the meantime, Kevin falls down to 8. And Dimitri does have another Raging Ravine as well. So we could see a repeat. Kevin, by the way, drew his own copy of Collective Brutality there, but...
Another copy, in fact. No, Kevin drew it. Okay.
Yeah, this is Kevin's turn.
And this only makes sense. If you go for this line of play the first time, you have to do it for the second time as well. Assuming that Kevin cannot really do something meaningful here, you will force that chump block with Snapcaster Mage.
So Raging Ravine dies again to another lightning bolt.
I know.
And Kevin's going to play with fire here. He's going to fall down to 4. He could go into full desperation mode, play a Snapcaster Mage just to chump to save 4, and then have that same line that he's been thinking about where he lightning bolts and Snapcasters in the same turn for next turn.
Actually, that Snapcaster that could have chump block would have flashback the lightning bolt in his graveyard. So it wouldn't have been a complete loss. I'm actually surprised.
Just use that one instead. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
I think I would have stayed on 8 and but
just have discarded a Snapcaster here.
Yeah, instead of the bolt.
Yeah, I think so too.
Kevin Jones is the Grixis Delver Master, so sure, and Owen Turtenwald is sitting next to him. I'm sure they have a plan here. It just seems like you have to deal with the Tarmogoyf sooner or later anyway, and being on 4 life makes it more likely that you'll die to random effects.
Yes, it does. Okay, there's Snapcaster Mage now. It's going to target Murderer's Cut.
Target cut. I mean, he's never going to have Blossom defense against that, right?
Block.
That's just a safety measure.
Yep, and then Murderer's Cut anyway.
Feature, redundancy, land, and bolt. Yeah.
I like this. This looks pretty nice here for Kevin Jones. He gets to keep his Snapcaster Mage. Tarmogoyf goes away. And there's Liliana of the Veil.
Oh, yes.
Now this, depending on how Dimitri wants to approach this, you know, Kevin has answers. He's going to lose his Snapcaster Mage, but now it's just open to a lightning bolt.
Yeah, but you had 2 minus in the face of the Snapcaster Mage. You wanted to get rid of that anyway.
Yeah.
I still don't like how Dimitri just fed his Raging Ravines to the lightning bolts.
Yeah.
Because Kevin didn't actually have good plays. You gave him a chance to do something meaningful on his turn. I think the only reason to not cast Liliana 3 turns earlier was remand.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that seemed like a better turn of events, because if Kevin remands, at least you get in with your Tarmogoyf and you didn't lose much.
So Serum Visions comes after the Young Pyromancer, which is going to give him an Elemental.
Not sure when I like him, but I think we'll do this. It'll always just, yeah.
It's going to keep both of those cards. Top one was a land, so card he's been looking for a while. Dimitri, on the other hand, really wants to try to find some way to finish off, and he has not. Simon, he's got a pair of lands in his hand, and Kevin Jones looks like he is poised to kind of turn the corner on this game.
This is scary. This is very scary, because you know that a card like Young Pyromancer will run out of control, and 4 life is one more than a top deck lightning bolt will take care of. So this is getting really grim really quickly.
Okay, here's Serum Visions, netting him another Elemental. And he knew that top card was a land because he put it there. He drew the Spell Snare for his turn, but Spirebluff Canal here for Kevin Jones. He's going to send the Young Pyromancer at Liliana and one of the Elementals at Dimitri to knock him down to 19. And Dimitri is just desperate to find some action here. All spells in hand for Kevin Jones, and they're pretty nice too. Take a look. Electrolyze, Snapcaster Mage with a pretty full graveyard, Bolt, Snare, Collective Brutality. Is that another land off the top for Dimitri? Oh no.
And what do you want to draw? This is the point.
Right.
Your Liliana doesn't do much. Your 2-drops get spell snared. Your small creatures get killed. You've given this Grixis deck too much time and too much value.
Yeah, they can grind with the best of them.
You thought you could play an aggro game, but couldn't finish it up. Couldn't close the deal.
You're right, and look how much this one has slipped away. How important is it for Kevin Jones to stay the difference between like 3 and 4 here?
I think it's huge, because his deck is not a permission-based deck, and also not a life gain deck. it's exactly what he showed us. It's happy to trade life as a resource, life for tempo, but ultimately he has to turn the corner. And this is where, he's saying, I turned the corner, I'm not going to cast that Painful Truth because I know this life buffer of 4 or, this life buffer of 4 or 6 now is ultimately going to win me the game.
Yeah, he's going to drain for 2 here to see that there's just that land in hand. But now he's, creeping up on putting himself in 2 burn spells away. Just 2 lightning bolts or something. Scavenging Ooze it was, Simon. So that could be good. But it gets snap spell snared here. Kevin pretty happy to get that out of his hand, knowing that it's a good target. And Kevin Jones has the game here.
He can actually flash back Collective Brutality from his graveyard or Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, or Lightning Bolt or anything. Snapcaster, Bolt, and Kevin Jones takes the match 2-0. So they built their decks around him playing this deck, and he certainly did them proud that time. So that's 2-0, and that means that we've got 1 game to decide it. How about we go to table B? That's Igor Kliansky versus Owen Turtenwald. That's Bant Eldrazi versus Infect. We saw a great game last game, nice and close, and now we get the real deal here, Simon. This is the one that's going to decide the entire round for these teams.
Okay, we can start. Can we start? Okay. 17. Yep.
Yeah, you can feel the tension.
Yeah, absolutely.
And once again, it's going to be all about mana. How fast does the Bant Eldrazi deck develop? Does it have the luxury to keep open mana for Path to Exile, Stubborn Denial, Blessed Alliance, or even the activation of Eldrazi Displacer? And the same goes for Owen Turtenwald, except that he wants to keep open his spells to threaten a combo kill and to protect his creatures.
Ancient Stirring starts things off for Igor. And it looks like you found, yes, an Eldrazi Temple. This could lead to a pretty explosive start for him.
Owen, I believe, is looking at a very explosive hand himself. He has the turn 1 Glistener Elf. Not the most lands in his hand as far as I can see, but a lot of pump, which is almost a natural conclusion.
Really forcing Igor to have interactive spells in the early stages here.
Or even just forcing him to leave open mana, and that throws him back enough so that Owen can win. Similarly to game 2, where suddenly that last Inkmoth Nexus was just not beatable anymore.
Sure.
There it is, turn 2 Eldrazi Sky Spawner, which is definitely a pain for Owen.
Yeah, it's not quite Lingering Souls, but it's a little bit like that.
It has that vibe. Gitaxian Probe is going to reveal what ultimately is a fairly weak hand here for Igor. Sure, the Path to Exile is there to give him that first line of defense, but then it's just a bunch of lands.
Interesting. I would like to go back to turn 1. Getting that Eldrazi Temple when you don't have any threats in hand.
It did allow him to play this Sky Spawner a turn early, but yeah, it looks like it's left him a bit threat light in hand by taking an additional land when you've already got a bunch of lands in hand.
Sure, that would have protected him from a turn 1 Glistener Elf, but usually you don't plan to beat the turn 2 combo kill. You plan to play a normal game, and then having 7 or 8 mana sources is usually not where you want to be.
Now this does get kind of interesting because Owen has found himself a Blighted Agent.
But no additional land?
Well, he actually does have an additional land in his hand. I'm pretty sure I saw Verdant Catacombs in hand. You see that too, right, Simon?
Yes. Groundswell is, of course, a reason.
Yes.
Wanting to force...
But it's a fetch land. Like, you can...
Sure. 12.
Groundswell anyway.
Huh.
This is cool. I mean, that's Owen Turtenwald. He's got something.
15.
Yeah, he's obviously not unhappy to make this trade.
And he also knew.
We can take a look at his hand here, and he wouldn't have been able to protect that Blighted Agent. I think that's an important part of the puzzle.
Ну, это он не будет. Но он в прошлый раз очень круто в Ultimate выиграл с Бейта. Да, он очень круто в этот выиграл. Он нашел
He might have already decided that he wants to get Dryad Arbor with that fetch land. I think that's the most likely reason to hold back the land, because you wouldn't want to fetch a mana producing land in response anyway. You know about the Blessed Alliance, so you might as well play it like this. I know that Distortion Strike is the poor man's Blighted Agent, especially in this matchup.
Yeah, does Owen run those?
Yeah, he has one in hand.
He's got one in hand, okay. He's got one of those, and he's got 2 Twisted Image in hand.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him cycle at least one of those.
Yeah.
Because you bring it in against the unknown number of spell skites you're expecting. But if your opponent doesn't drop them really early, you can be quite sure that they don't have it.
He's even going to prevent a damage with it here.
Getting all the value.
The smallest of edges for Owen Turtenwald, as he tries to put Team USA in a good position for that top 16, but Team Belarus is not going to make it easy. They've already forced the third and deciding match and game.
We should have another look at Blessed Alliance, because there's a third mode on that card that might become relevant. Yes.
Creatures mode.
Suddenly you're blocking.
True, very true.
So now Owen has to somehow combine. I assume Dryad Arbor, the way he played his land, the way he played his fetch land, premeditated.
Yes, there it is, Dryad Arbor.
And then combining Distortion Strike with Dryad Arbor should play around all modes on Blessed Alliance.
He's going to cycle Twisted Image again. He's convinced that there's no Spellskite in his near future here. He found a Dismember with that.
Also, this was end of turn.
Yes,
so
that was all end of turn.
There was certainly no Spellskite arriving.
That's right. Pendelhaven, which is what he found off the first Twisted Image.
So that triggers landfall for the ground spells in his hand. He did not cast the Distortion Strike.
No, he did not, and it's a sorcery, so he won't be able to. So is this Blessed Alliance going to get to untap and force Owen Turtenwald to once again burn through some pump spells just to get...
At least this time it doesn't force him to use 2 pump spells. And he has a Pendelhaven, so blocking for Igar is really awkward.
It is.
Actually, I think that Twisted Image... I think he doesn't have that Twisted Image anymore. Or did he draw a third one? No. So Twisted Image is not... is off the table, but still, this was a good trade, of course. He didn't spend a card in that exchange.
That's right.
What Owen really would want to see is a way to give his creature hexproof. Finds a Vastfoot or a Blossoming Defense, which I believe he's running. I haven't seen them yet. That would make it absolutely sure that he can go off.
I have Turtenwald's deck list in front of me here. He is playing 1.
1 in the main deck.
Yep.
And that's it. That's to me one of the most interesting questions to Infect players this weekend. How many and why?
Yeah. But Owen's sticking with the traditional 4 copies of Vines of Vastwood and the 1 additional Blossoming Defense. They serve a similar role. Vines a lot more flexible, though, at the cost of mana.
Igar is flooding again, this time for different reasons. Not because of the amount of sideboard cards, but just the way his starting hand looked like. He didn't really have much to work with. Yeah,
he is being mercilessly punished for having a flood hand here, and that means that Glistener Elf is going to be the recipient of Pendelhaven activation, which is going to give him 2 poison counters as Owen starts to work things forward for Team USA here.
You could see an attack with Noble Hierarch as well.
Yes.
Once again, being very aware of that sideboard card, and an opponent that's sitting there with 3 cards in hand. If they're holding 3 lands, you're going to win anyway. If they're holding 2 Blessed Alliances or 1 Blessed Alliance, you're really happy you played around it.
Absolutely. And Owen, once again, content to just keep chipping away with Glistener Elf and Pendelhaven. And here is a Blighted Agent. Owen confident that there's not going to be a sweeper or some such.
Actually,
Igor.
and that I was just going to say that.
Wow,
Blighted Agent is the 2 casting cost
Yes. His opponent just drew Engineered Explosives.
card, which is the card that punishes Owen for the slow approach he's taken.
Yes. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and Igor is basically forced to pop it immediately.
Cutting off a bunch of extra mana. From
Extra mana and Exalted triggers. You don't want to play against that.
Super interesting here too, because Owen has been dutifully playing around Blessed Alliance, but now we have to see if he really thinks his opponent has a Blessed Alliance or not. Yeah. He's got a lot. I mean, what does he have? He has 2 or 3 pump spells in hand, right? A pair of Groundswells and the Distortion Strike.
I'm going to be honest. Owen was hoping for Igor to tap out, or to play that Reality Smasher, or to do something which would give him more information about what Igor is holding.
Owen's attacking.
I think that's correct because he has another Infect creature.
Is it a Viridian Corruptor here?
Yeah, the rarely seen Viridian Corruptor.
Yeah, no. He's just going to play it as a 2/2 with Infect. But it may get the job done if Igor Klyansky cannot find something. And he has.
Sure.
Igor has always kept open his white mana.
Yeah.
Keeping
Very
the
smart.
keeping the bluff alive. And Owen, this is sometimes the problem if you're such a good player and you've had the read and you've played around it the whole game. It's really difficult to get out of that mindset and suddenly play differently.
Yeah, well, for now, I think we're going to see Might of Volcrosa plus Distortion Strike.
Yeah, it looks like Owen will just make both of his creatures unblockable and lethal.
And lethal, and attack for both, and that does it. Owen Turtenwald wins his match for the United States, and they finish up a very solid day 1 at 5-2. Yeah, solid enough even to make Owen Turtenwald smile. You can see that there as his teammates Paul and company pat him on the back, because they put him in very, very good position here to be one of the top 16 teams for tomorrow, which has big implications as you effectively earn a bye for the first round. Now, we'll have to see how things flesh out as far as the standings goes, but 5-2 looks to be in a pretty good position for Team USA there. Now, not to fear though, if you're a fan of Team Belarus, as they're still into day 2. They were playing for an advantaged position tomorrow, but they're going to be in the elimination rounds tomorrow.
Absolutely, and we'll see more matches of them. We've been treated to quite a few awesome modern matchups today already.
Absolutely, and we're really just. We got the put them in the boggle container and hit the button, because there's so many different decks that these players and these teams have chosen, and where they decide to sit is they put them where they want the decks to be, and we just let them sit and play. And we've gotten pretty lucky, I think, to see some of the cooler matchups here today for Team Unified Modern. Of course, tomorrow we're also going to have Team Unified Modern as we work our way towards that last final cut. And, of course, we'll be explaining all of these things and bringing you information about how it's going to end up going tomorrow as well, with regards to the structure and how things go. Because here at the World Magic Cup, we do things a little bit differently, given that it's a team event.
For now, the things you have to look out for is who is in the top 16 and who's in the top 48.
Yes.
But Rich will walk you through that.
That's right. And the top 48, by the way, all of those are going on to the next out of about 72 countries that we had here. All right. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with Simon and I, but we'll be back after these messages.
Hello there, welcome back to the news desk. Round 7 is done. All the number crunching is still waiting to happen, though. We need to know who are the top 16 seeds that get byes tomorrow morning. We need to know who is 17 through 48, who will play tomorrow in the elimination matchup in the meat grinder that is round 1 tomorrow morning. And we need to know who is 49th through 73rd and will not be returning on day 2 of the World Magic Cup. All of that coming up in just a couple of minutes in our day 1 review. But to walk you through some of the scores from that round, Belgium and the Dominican Republic, they drew. They were right at the top of the standings, guaranteed 1 and 2 seeds, somewhere in the 8 pools. Belgium 6-0-1, Dominican Republic 5-1-1. Huge match that Brian David Marshall got a chance to look at was Germany. They were playing to get to 6-1. They did so, defeating Portugal, who fall to 4-2-1. That could be right on the verge of 14, 15, 16, 17, somewhere around there. Hong Kong up to 5-2. Chile finished with a couple of draws, 3-2 and 2, but probably back tomorrow. Greece 5-2, finalists with Bill Chronopoulos. They did very well. Finland finished 5-2, Puerto Rico 4-3. They'll be through to day 2, but won't necessarily get a top seed, almost certainly not. They'll have to play. Most of the 4 and 3s will play maybe a hard cut somewhere around the 5-2 mark. We'll find out when we have final standings. More results coming your way. Ireland defeated Scotland. This was a little local Celtic rivalry. Ireland 4-2-1. They're through. Scotland 3-0 in limited, 0-4 in modern. Do they squeak in by virtue of that 3-0? Will their tiebreaks be good enough? We'll find out in just a minute. So that's some of the results coming here. Also sweating on 3 and 4. Brazil, Singapore, Palavida Damarosa, Thiago Saporito,